The fluorescent lights of the trauma center hummed a sound that usually signaled the end of a grueling shift for Esther. At 20, she was a surgical prodigy, a woman whose hands moved with a precision that defied her age. But as she stepped out into the biting midnight air of the city, the hum didn't fade. It grew louder, vibrating in her teeth, until the world suddenly tilted into blackness. When the light returned, it wasn't the warm glow of the hospital. It was the sterile, terrifying white of a nightmare. Esther tried to move, but her wrists were pinned by heavy leather straps. Her surgical mind instinctively began a head-to-toe assessment. Heart rate elevated, pupils likely dilated, respiratory rate climbing. Then she looked around, and the doctor in her was replaced by a victim. She was in a cavernous, subterranean hall. Rows of metal cots stretched into the gloom, holding hundreds of young men and women, some weeping, some unconscious, all bound. "Stay still, patient 114, a voice commanded. A man in a hazmat suit hovered over her. In his hand was a pressurized injector. Inside the glass chamber sat a swirling, iridescent liquid that glowed with a sickly, hypnotic green. "What is that?" Esther rasped, her voice cracking. "What are you doing to us?" Evolution, the scientist whispered. He pressed the device against her carotid artery. There was a hiss, and then the world exploded. It felt as if 1,000 needles made of ice were racing through her veins, followed immediately by a wave of molten lava. She screamed, but the sound was drowned out by the chorus of over 300 others undergoing the same agony. Days passed in a blur of fever and shadowed faces. Eventually, the survivors, the successful adaptations, were unshackled and herded like cattle into a massive atrium. The room was beautiful in a haunting way, capped by a dome of reinforced glass. Beyond the glass, however, was a shimmering violet curtain of energy, a force field. They weren't patients. They were a stockpile. "Don't look at the cameras," a calm voice said. Esther turned to see a woman in her 30s. Her face etched with exhaustion, but her eyes remarkably steady. "I'm Masha," the woman said, reaching out a hand. "Esther," she replied, taking it. As their skin touched, a spark jumped between them. Masha flinched, and a small gust of wind swirled around her feet, kicking up dust in a perfect circle. "It's starting," Masha whispered, terrified. "The changes." Around them, the room descended into a chaotic display of the impossible. A man screamed as his hands ignited into pillars of flame, scorching the wall behind him. A young woman collapsed as the floor beneath her turned to liquid ripples. People were crying, lashing out, and accidentally hurting one another as their bodies betrayed the laws of physics. Esther felt the pressure building behind her eyes, a sensory overload, unlike anything she had ever experienced. She could hear the hum of the electricity in the walls. She could feel the moisture in the breath of the person standing 10 feet away. She could feel the vibration of the very tectonic plates beneath the facility. "Everyone stop!" Esther shouted. Her voice didn't just carry, it resonated. As she spoke, the chaotic fires in the room flickered and died. The water on the floor stilled. The metal rafters stopped their groaning. She wasn't just a healer anymore. She was a conductor. From the far corner of the room, a young man watched her. He looked to be about 25, with sharp features and shadows under his eyes that spoke of a deep, lonely power. Xerxes. He didn't move toward her, but Esther felt it pull a magnetic tether. She could sense his power, identical to hers, a mirror of the storm inside her chest. He caught her gaze and quickly looked away, his shoulders tense, but the air between them thrummed with a shared, powerful secret. Masha gripped Esther's arm. "They're looking to you, Esther. All of them." She was a surgeon. She was trained to lead in a crisis. Esther looked at the terrified faces of the survivors. She stood tall, her hands glowing with a faint, multicolored light that spoke of Earth, sky, and everything in between. "We aren't their weapons," Esther said, her voice echoing off the force field. "We're going to learn how to use this, and then we're going to get out."